The crack of gunfire echoed across the valley as Violet Blackburn clung to the side of her father's house, her knuckles white against the weathered wood. The year was 1875, and the Montana Territory had never felt more like a prison than it did today. Her father's voice boomed from inside, striking fear into her heart not for the first time. "You'll marry Clayton Wilcox by the end of the month, and that's final. His family owns the water rights to the northern valley, and with this drought, we need that land or we'll lose everything." Violet's breath caught in her throat. At 22, she had dreams beyond becoming a bargaining chip in her father's desperate land grab. She peered through the window, catching sight of her father's ruddy face as he paced the floor, waving his hands wildly at her mother, who sat quietly, hands folded in her lap as if in prayer. "But George, she doesn't even know the man," her mother protested weakly. "Doesn't matter, Martha. Clayton's father has agreed to the arrangement. The Wilcox property connects to ours combined. We'd have the largest ranch in the county. Violet will learn to appreciate the match." Violet's heart hammered against her ribs. Clayton Wilcox, the name alone, sent a chill down her spine. He was nearly twice her age, a man with cold eyes and a reputation for cruelty toward his horses and ranch hands alike. She had seen him in town, throwing his weight around, demanding respect through intimidation rather than earning it. She pressed her back against the wall, wiping away a tear. Her life on the family ranch had been hard but honest work. She had learned to break horses alongside her brothers, could shoot straighter than most men in the county, and knew the land like the back of her hand. The Blackburn ranch was modest compared to the Wilcox spread, but it was home. A horse approached from the distance, pulling Violet from her thoughts. She shielded her eyes against the setting sun, making out the familiar silhouette of Adam Ryder, her father's newest ranch hand. He had arrived 6 months ago, a drifter with quiet confidence and eyes that seemed to see right through pretense. At 26, he'd already lived enough for 2 lifetimes, or so the stories went. Adam dismounted with the easy grace of a man born to the saddle. His hat, worn at the edges, shadowed features bronzed by years under the open sky. When he spotted Violet, a smile touched his lips, crinkling the corners of his eyes. "Evening, Miss Blackburn," he called, leading his horse to the water trough. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Violet quickly wiped her face, straightening her simple calico dress. "Just family matters, Mr. Ryder." Adam studied her for a long moment, his gaze lingering on her tear-stained cheeks. "Family matters don't usually leave marks like that," he said softly, gesturing to her face. Before she could respond, the front door flew open. George Blackburn stood framed in the doorway, his imposing frame blocking the light from within. "Ryder, get those cattle moved to the north pasture before sundown," he barked. His eyes narrowed as they darted between Adam and his daughter. "Violet, inside, now." Violet cast one last glance at Adam before obeying her father's command. As she passed him in the doorway, George grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her flesh. "You stay away from that cowboy," he hissed under his breath. "Your future is with Clayton Wilcox. I won't have you jeopardizing this arrangement because you've got eyes for some saddle tramp." Violet yanked her arm free. "Adam is a good man and a hard worker. He's a nobody with nothing to his name but that horse and whatever he carries in his saddlebag." Her father spat. "Clayton Wilcox can give you security, position, a future. What can Ryder offer besides pretty words and empty pockets?" The question lingered in the air between them, unanswered because they both knew the truth. In this harsh land, survival often trumped matters of the heart. That night, Violet couldn't sleep. Her room, once a sanctuary, felt like a cell. The walls seemed to close in as she imagined a life with Clayton Wilcox, a man whose reputation made her skin crawl. Dawn was still hours away when she made her decision. She slipped from her bed and dressed quickly, packing a small bundle of essentials. The house was quiet as she crept down the stairs and out the back door. The cool night air brushed against her face, carrying the scent of sage and open spaces, the smell of freedom. Violet made her way to the stables where she found her mare, a spirited buckskin named Penny. As she saddled the horse, a voice from the shadows nearly stopped her heart. "Going somewhere?" Adam stepped into the dim light filtering through the stable window. He was fully dressed, as if he'd never gone to bed. "I can't stay," Violet whispered, her hands trembling as she tightened the saddle cinch. "My father has arranged for me to marry Clayton Wilcox. I won't do it. I can't." Adam's expression darkened. Wilcox, the man's reputation is blacker than a new moon night. He hesitated, then added, "Where will you go?" "My aunt lives in Denver. She'll take me in until I can find work." "That's 300 miles of hard country, Miss Blackburn. Bandits, wild animals, rough terrain. It's no journey for a woman alone, even one as capable as yourself." Violet lifted her chin. "I'd rather face those dangers than be forced into a loveless marriage to a cruel man." Adam considered her for a long moment. "Give me 5 minutes," he said finally. Disappearing into the tack room, he emerged with his own saddle and gear. "What are you doing?" Violet asked, though she already knew. "I'm coming with you," he replied simply, as if escorting a woman fleeing an arranged marriage was the most natural thing in the world. "At least until you're safely with your aunt. Your father will fire me anyway, once he discovers you're gone." "You'd risk everything for me." Adam's eyes met hers in the darkness. "Some things are worth risking everything for, Miss Blackburn." They rode out under the cover of darkness, two silhouettes against the vast Montana sky. Violet knew that by sunrise her father would discover her absence and send men after them. George Blackburn was not a man who accepted defiance, especially not from his only daughter. As the first rays of dawn painted the eastern horizon, Violet glanced at Adam riding beside her. His profile was sharp against the growing light, his expression resolute. For the first time since hearing of her father's plans, Violet felt a flicker of hope. They pushed their horses hard through the morning, keeping to less traveled paths. By midday, they stopped at a small creek to rest the animals and themselves. Violet splashed cold water on her face, the reality of what she'd done finally sinking in. "He'll never forgive me," she said quietly. Adam, kneeling beside his horse, looked up. "Your father?" "Yes, the Blackburn name means everything to him. Running away like this, it's the ultimate betrayal in his eyes." "What about his betrayal?" "Selling you off to cement a business deal?" Adam's voice was tight with controlled anger. "A father should protect his daughter, not use her as currency." Violet had never heard anyone speak so boldly against her father's authority. In their small community, George Blackburn's word was rarely questioned, his decisions accepted as law. "Clayton Wilcox will come after me," she said, the fear evident in her voice. "He's not a man who likes to lose, especially not something he considers rightfully his." Adam stood, brushing dirt from his jeans. "You're not property to be claimed, Miss Blackburn. Your heart is your own to give." His eyes met hers, unwavering. "And I'll stand between you and any man who says otherwise." The conviction in his voice stirred something in Violet, a feeling both terrifying and exhilarating. She had always been taught that a woman's duty was to obey, first her father, then her husband. Adam spoke as if she had the right to choose her own path. They continued their journey south, making good progress until late afternoon when Adam suddenly reined his horse to a stop. Violet followed suit, watching as he scanned the horizon behind them. "Riders," he said grimly. 5, maybe 6, moving fast. Violet's heart sank. "My father's men. Most likely, we need to find cover." They veered off their path, heading toward a rocky outcropping that would provide shelter and a defensive position if needed. As they reached the rocks, Adam helped Violet dismount, then quickly led the horses into a natural depression where they wouldn't be easily spotted. "Stay low," he instructed, drawing his revolver to check the chambers. "I'm going to see how close they are." Violet caught his arm. "Adam, I won't have you risking your life. This is my fight." His expression softened momentarily. "It became our fight the moment I rode out with you." He hesitated, then added more gently, "Violet, I need you to know something. If things go badly—" "Don't say that," she interrupted. "If they do," he persisted, "I want you to know I didn't come with you out of some misplaced sense of chivalry. I came because the thought of you with Wilcox—" He stopped, seeming to struggle with his words. It cut deeper than any knife. Before Violet could respond, the distant sound of hoofbeats grew louder. Adam squeezed her hand once, then disappeared among the rocks to scout their pursuers. Violet crouched in the shelter of a boulder, her father's shotgun, which she'd had the foresight to bring, clutched in trembling hands. Minutes stretched like hours as she waited, every sound magnified by her fear. Finally, Adam returned, his expression grim. "It's them all right. Your father, Clayton Wilcox, and 4 ranch hands. They're moving this way." Violet's blood ran cold. "Clayton's with them?" "Yes. Looks like your father made good on his promise." Adam's jaw tightened. "They've split up to search the area. We can't outrun them with the horses. They'd spot us in the open. We'll have to face them here." "I won't go back," Violet said, raising her chin defiantly. "I'd rather die than marry that man." Adam took her face in his hands, his touch gentler than she would have expected from a man whose life had been shaped by the harsh realities of the frontier. "No one's dying today," he said firmly, "but I need you to promise me something. If things go wrong, if there's no other choice, you take my horse and ride south as hard as you can. Don't look back, don't stop until you reach Denver." "I won't leave you," she protested. "You will if it means your freedom." His eyes bore into hers. "Promise me." After a moment's hesitation, Violet nodded. "I promise." Adam positioned them where they had the best view of the approaching riders while remaining concealed. The tension built as their pursuers drew nearer, voices carrying on the still afternoon air. She couldn't have gotten far. Clayton Wilcox's distinctive drawl reached them. "When I find that girl, she'll learn what happens to women who think they can defy me." Beside her, Adam's body tensed like a coiled spring. Violet placed a restraining hand on his arm, knowing that rushing out now would only get him killed. Her father's voice followed, sounding weary but determined. "Remember our agreement, Wilcox. Violet is to be unharmed." Clayton's laugh was cold. "Unharmed, sure, but she'll need to be taught her place. No wife of mine will ever pull a stunt like this again." The men were close enough now that Violet could see Clayton's face clearly, the cruel set of his mouth, the arrogant tilt of his head. Her father rode beside him, looking older and more haggard than she remembered. "They're going to pass right by us," Adam whispered. "If we stay quiet, They might miss us altogether. But fate had other plans. One of the ranch hands, a man named Pete who had worked for her father for years, happened to glance in their direction. His eyes widened in recognition. "Mr. Blackburn," he called out, "over there, in the rocks." Everything happened at once. The riders wheeled their horses around, Clayton drawing his gun with practiced ease. Adam pushed Violet behind him and stepped out from their hiding place, his revolver steady in his hand. "That's far enough," Adam called out, his voice carrying across the distance between them. Clayton sneered, looking Adam up and down with contempt. "Well, if it isn't the hired help. Should have known you'd be behind this." He turned to George Blackburn. "Your daughter's run off with a ranch hand. This is who you hire to work your land?" George's face flushed with anger. "Violet," he shouted, "come out here this instant." Violet emerged from behind the rocks, her father's shotgun still in her hands. "I'm not coming home, Father, and I'm certainly not marrying him." She nodded toward Clayton, whose face darkened with rage. "You don't have a choice in the matter, girl," Clayton spat. "The agreement's been made. Your father signed the contracts. Half your family's water rights are already mine." "Contracts?" Violet turned to her father, shock and betrayal plain on her face. "You've already signed away our land." George Blackburn had the decency to look ashamed. "Times are hard, Violet. The drought's worse than anything we've seen. Without Wilcox's water access, we'll lose everything by winter." "So you sold me instead?" The words hung in the air, sharp as knives. Clayton dismounted, his patience clearly at an end. "Enough of this nonsense. Ryder, step away from her now, or I'll put a bullet between your eyes." Adam didn't move. "She's not property to be traded, Wilcox. She deserves the right to choose her own path, her own husband." "Her husband?" Clayton laughed, the sound ugly in the still air. "Is that what this is about? You think she'd choose a saddle tramp over a man with means?" He looked at Violet. "Tell him, girl. Tell him who owns the deed to half your father's land already. Tell him what happens to your family if you don't honor the agreement." Violet's grip tightened on the shotgun. "I won't be sold or traded. Not for land, not for water rights, not for anything." "Violet, be reasonable," her father pleaded. "The Blackburn Ranch has been in our family for 3 generations. Would you let it die because you're too stubborn to do your duty?" "My duty?" Violet's voice rose. "Was it Mother's duty to marry you? Did you force her hand too?" George flinched as if struck. "That was different. Your mother and I loved each other," Violet finished for him. "You had a choice, Father. Why shouldn't I?" For a moment, doubt flickered across George Blackburn's weathered face. But Clayton Wilcox had no patience for family drama. He took another step forward, his gun still trained on Adam. "Last chance, Ryder. Step aside." Adam stood his ground. "Her heart chooses its own path, Wilcox. It doesn't choose you." The tension between the men was palpable, like heat lightning before a storm. Violet knew that any moment violence would erupt. "Father," she said, her voice steadier than she felt, "if you ever loved Mother truly, if you ever honored her choice to be with you, then respect mine now. I will not marry Clayton Wilcox." Something shifted in George Blackburn's expression, a softening around the eyes, a slight lowering of his rigid shoulders. "Violet." But Clayton had heard enough. With a curse, he raised his gun and fired at Adam. Time seemed to slow. Violet saw Adam twist, saw the dirt kick up near his feet as the bullet missed him by inches. Then Adam's own gun was up, returning fire with deadly accuracy. Clayton cried out, dropping his weapon as blood bloomed on his shoulder. The ranch hands reached for their weapons, but George Blackburn's voice cut through the chaos. "Hold! Nobody fires another shot!" To Violet's surprise, the men obeyed, though Clayton was cursing furiously, clutching his wounded shoulder. "You've lost your mind, Blackburn," Clayton shouted. "Your man just shot me." "After you tried to kill him," George replied coldly. He turned to Adam, who still had his gun trained steadily on Clayton. "Lower your weapon, Ryder." After a moment's hesitation, Adam complied, though he remained positioned protectively in front of Violet. George dismounted slowly, approaching his daughter with caution, as one might approach a spooked horse. When he spoke, his voice was different, the commanding tone gone, replaced by something almost pleading. "Violet, I've made many mistakes in my life. Perhaps this is the greatest." He glanced at Clayton, who was being tended to by one of the ranch hands. "I thought I was securing your future, the ranch's future. I didn't stop to consider what your mother would say if she were here." "She would tell you that love matters more than land," Violet said quietly. George nodded, a sad smile touching his lips. "She would. She did. Many times." He looked at Adam, measuring him with new eyes. "You were willing to die for my daughter today." "I still am, sir," Adam replied steadily. "The contracts," Clayton began, but George cut him off, "can be renegotiated or challenged in court. I'll take my chances with the drought before I'll force my daughter into a marriage she doesn't want." Clayton's face contorted with fury. "This isn't over, Blackburn. That land will be mine, one way or another." George turned to him, something dangerous flashing in his eyes. "Threaten my family again, Wilcox, and you'll answer to me. Now get on your horse and ride back to your own property while you still can." For a tense moment, it seemed Clayton might refuse, but with his wounded shoulder and his clear disadvantage, he eventually allowed himself to be helped onto his horse. Before riding away, he fixed Violet with a look of pure hatred. "You'll regret this decision, girl. Mark my words." As Clayton and his men rode off, George turned back to Violet and Adam. The anger had drained from him, leaving a man who suddenly looked his full 55 years. "I don't condone your running away," he told Violet, "but I understand it now. Can you forgive an old fool who thought he knew what was best?" Tears welled in Violet's eyes. She had expected fury, punishment, even disownment, but not this humble request for forgiveness. "I can, Father, if you can accept that my heart has made its choice." George's gaze shifted to Adam. "And is this cowboy your choice?" Violet glanced at Adam, whose eyes never left her face. In them she saw everything she'd ever wanted, but never dared hope for strength tempered with gentleness, passion held in check by respect. "Yes," she said simply. "He is." George sighed heavily. "Then I suppose we'd better head home and figure out another way to save the ranch." He looked pointedly at Adam. "Unless you have any suggestions, Ryder?" Adam straightened. "Actually, sir, I might. Before I came to Montana, I worked a spread in Nevada where they'd developed a new irrigation method for drought conditions. If you're willing to listen, I believe it could work for the Blackburn ranch." For the first time that day, hope flickered across George's face. "I'm willing to listen." He hesitated, then added gruffly, "And if my daughter has chosen you, I suppose you'd better start calling me George." As they mounted up to ride home, Violet found herself beside Adam, their horses walking close enough that their legs occasionally brushed. The touch, even through layers of fabric, sent warmth spreading through her. "I meant what I said," she told him softly. "You are my choice." Adam's smile transformed his face, erasing the hard lines that life had carved there. "And you are mine, Violet Blackburn." You have been since the moment I first saw you breaking that wild Mustang no other hand could touch." Violet laughed, the sound bright in the late afternoon sun. "That was the day you arrived. You watched me for 10 minutes before announcing yourself." 11 minutes, he corrected with a grin. "I was counting, and in every one of those minutes, I was falling a little more in love with the bravest woman I'd ever seen." As they rode home together, not as fugitives, but as family, Violet realized that for the first time in her life, she was truly free. Not because she had escaped an arranged marriage, but because she had claimed the right to choose her own destiny, her own love. The Montana sunset painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson as they crested the final hill overlooking the Blackburn ranch. Home looked different now, not a prison but a promise, a place where new beginnings could take root and grow, nurtured by love, freely given and received. Adam reached across the space between them, his hand finding hers. "Whatever comes, we face it together," he said, his voice carrying the weight of a vow. Violet laced her fingers through his, the touch a seal on a promise that needed no words. Together, they rode toward home and the future that awaited them, a future they would build with their own hands, their own hearts, their own choices. The weeks that followed were filled with both hard work and healing. True to his word, Adam shared his knowledge of the Nevada irrigation techniques, working alongside George to implement the system across the Blackburn ranch. The relationship between the two men was tentative at first, marked by George's lingering guilt and Adam's protective instincts toward Violet. But as days passed, grudging respect grew into genuine appreciation. Clayton Wilcox, however, remained a shadow over their newfound peace. Word reached them that he was consulting lawyers in Helena about the contracts George had signed. The threat of legal action hung over the ranch like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. One evening in late August, Violet found Adam sitting alone on the front porch, staring out at the sunset. The golden light caught in his hair, highlighting strands the color of wheat among the darker brown. She settled beside him, their shoulders touching. "You're worried," she observed, knowing him well enough now to read the tension in his jaw. Adam nodded slightly. "Wilcox won't let this go. Men like him never do. It's not just about the land anymore, it's about his pride." "Let him come," Violet said with more confidence than she felt. "We've faced worse." Adam turned to look at her, his eyes searching her face. "Have we? Wilcox has money, connections, influence with the territorial judges. If he pushes this to court, then we'll fight him there too." Violet took his hand, tracing the calluses that spoke of years of honest labor. "Adam, I won't live my life afraid of what Clayton Wilcox might do. We've earned this happiness." He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss against her palm that sent warmth spreading through her. "You're right, as usual, He paused, seeming to struggle with his words. "I have something I want to ask you, and I don't want Wilcox's shadow hanging over us when I do." Violet's heart quickened. "Ask me what?" Before Adam could answer, the sound of approaching riders drew their attention. 3 men on horseback were coming up the long drive to the ranch house. In the fading light, Violet recognized the lead rider as Sheriff Tom Parker from town. George emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag as he walked over to meet the riders. Adam and Violet joined him, a sense of foreboding building between them. "Evening, George," Sheriff Parker greeted, removing his hat. "Miss Blackburn, Ryder." "What brings you out here, Tom?" George asked, though his expression suggested he already knew. The sheriff looked uncomfortable. "I've got papers here from Judge Wilson. He pulled a folded document from his vest pocket. "Clayton Wilcox has filed suit against you for breach of contract. You're summoned to appear in Helena in 2 weeks' time." George accepted the papers with a grim nod. "Not unexpected." "There's more," Sheriff Parker continued reluctantly. "Wilcox is claiming Ryder here stole property from him during your altercation. Says his father's pocket watch went missing after Ryder shot him." "That's a damn lie." Adam stepped forward, anger flashing in his eyes. "I've never stolen anything in my life." The sheriff raised a placating hand. "I'm just delivering the message, son." "But Wilcox has sworn statements from 2 of his men saying they saw you pick something up near where he fell." "This is ridiculous," Violet protested. "Adam never went near Clayton after he was shot." "Be that as it may," the sheriff continued, "the judge has issued a warrant for Ryder's arrest. I'm sorry, Adam, but I've got to take you in until this gets sorted." Adam's face hardened, his hand instinctively moving toward his gun before he caught himself. The 2 deputies with the sheriff tensed, their hands hovering near their own weapons. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," Sheriff Parker warned. George put a hand on Adam's shoulder. "We'll sort this out, son. Tom's just doing his job." For a tense moment, Violet feared Adam might resist. The thought of him in a jail cell, at the mercy of a judicial system that Clayton Wilcox could manipulate with his money and influence, made her blood run cold. But Adam slowly raised his hands. "I'll come peacefully, Sheriff, but know that this is Wilcox's doing his way of getting back at me and the Blackburns." As one of the deputies moved forward with handcuffs, Violet stepped between them. "Is that really necessary, Sheriff? Adam's not running. You've known him 6 months. Has he ever given you reason to doubt his word?" Sheriff Parker hesitated, then sighed. "No cuffs, Johnson, but keep an eye on him." Adam turned to Violet, his expression a mixture of anger and resignation. "I'll be fine. This is just Wilcox's game. He can't make theft charges stick when I didn't take anything." "I'll ride into town first thing tomorrow," George promised. "We'll get this straightened out." Violet couldn't speak past the knot in her throat as Adam mounted his horse, flanked by the sheriff and his deputies. As they prepared to ride out, Adam looked back at her, his gaze intense. "Remember what I said, Violet. I have something to ask you. Wait for me." Then they were gone, dust rising behind them as they rode toward town and the small jail where Adam would spend the night, or longer, depending on how much influence Clayton Wilcox truly had with Judge Wilson. Violet turned to her father, fear giving way to determination. "We need to fight this, both the land dispute and these false charges." George nodded grimly. "We will, but Wilcox is playing a dangerous game here. The land dispute is one thing, a legal matter between businessmen. But fabricating criminal charges? That's a different level." "He wants to destroy us," Violet said quietly, "because I refused him, because Adam stood up to him." "Men like Wilcox don't take defeat well," George agreed, "but he's made a mistake. False accusations can backfire." That night, Violet barely slept. The thought of Adam in a cell, facing charges that could send him to territorial prison if Wilcox's influence ran deep enough, kept her tossing and turning. By dawn, she had formed a plan. She found her father in the kitchen, already dressed and preparing to ride into town. "I'm coming with you," she announced, leaving no room for argument. George looked at her, noting the determined set of her jaw so like her mother's when she'd made up her mind. He merely nodded. "Be ready in 10 minutes." The town of Pine Ridge was just stirring to life when they arrived. The jail was a modest building of weathered wood, connected to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Parker was at his desk when they entered, looking as if he hadn't slept much either. "George, Miss Blackburn," he greeted them, rising from his chair. "I expected you'd be by early." "How is he?" Violet asked immediately. "He's fine. Spent a quiet night. I brought him breakfast myself an hour ago." The sheriff gestured to a door leading to the cells. "You can see him if you like." Violet didn't wait for further permission. She hurried through the door to find Adam sitting on a narrow cot in one of two cells, reading a tattered book. When he saw her, he set the book aside and moved to the bars separating them. "Violet," he said, relief evident in his voice, "I was hoping you'd come." She reached through the bars to touch his face, needing the physical reassurance that he was truly unharmed. "Of course I came. We're going to get you out of here." Adam covered her hand with his own. "It won't be that simple. Wilcox was here last night talking to the sheriff. He's pressing for a trial in Helena. Wants me transported there today." Alarm shot through Violet. "Helena? But that's—" "Exactly. Once I'm out of Pine Ridge, who knows what could happen? Accidents on the road? Witnesses who suddenly remember seeing me take that watch?" Violet squeezed his hand. "We won't let that happen. Father's talking to Sheriff Parker now." Adam's eyes searched hers. "Violet, I need you to know something, in case things don't go our way." "Don't say that," she interrupted. "We'll fight this." "I know we will, but I need to say this anyway." He took a deep breath. "I love you. I think I've loved you since that first day I saw you. Everything that's happened leaving the ranch with you, standing against Wilcox, I'd do it all again in a heartbeat." Tears welled in Violet's eyes. "I love you too, Adam. And when this is over, we'll have a lifetime to tell each other that every day." The door opened behind her, and George entered with Sheriff Parker. The sheriff looked troubled. "I've been talking with your father," he said to Violet, "and I agree something doesn't add up with Wilcox's accusation, but Judge Wilson has already signed the transfer order. I'm supposed to escort Ryder to Helena this afternoon." "You can't," Violet protested. "This is exactly what Wilcox wants, to get Adam away from people who know him, who can vouch for his character." Sheriff Parker shifted uncomfortably. "I understand your concern, but I've got my orders." "What if we could prove Adam's innocence before the transfer?" George suggested. "Would that change things?" The sheriff considered this. "If I had solid evidence the charges were false, I could petition the judge to dismiss the case. But how would you prove it?" "The pocket watch," Violet said suddenly. "Wilcox claims it was his father's, right? An heirloom." "That's what his statement says," Sheriff Parker confirmed. "Then we need to find out if that watch is truly missing or if Wilcox is lying about the entire thing." Violet turned to her father. "We need to get onto the Wilcox property." George's expression grew concerned. "That's dangerous territory, Violet. If Wilcox catches anyone from our family trespassing—" "I'll go," came a voice from the door. They turned to see Martha Blackburn standing there, determination etched on her face. Violet was startled. Her mother rarely left the ranch and certainly never involved herself in confrontations. "Martha." George looked as surprised as Violet felt. "How did you—" "Followed you into town," she said simply, "and I heard everything." She entered the room fully, her normally gentle demeanor replaced by something harder, more resolute. "Eleanor Wilcox and I were friends before she married Clayton's father. I can pay her a social call without raising suspicions." Violet had almost forgotten that connection. Eleanor Wilcox, Clayton's stepmother, had indeed been friendly with Martha years ago, before the tensions between the families began. "It's too risky," George protested. "Less risky than our daughter or you going," Martha countered. "Besides, Eleanor has never approved of Clayton's methods. She might be willing to help if approached properly." Sheriff Parker rubbed his chin thoughtfully. if Mrs. Wilcox could confirm whether the watch is truly missing or not. "I'll go immediately," Martha said, her mind clearly made up. George looked at his wife with a mixture of worry and admiration. "I'm coming with you. I'll wait in town while you visit Eleanor, but I won't have you making that ride alone." Sheriff Parker cleared his throat. "The transport to Helena isn't scheduled until 4 o'clock. That gives you a few hours." As her parents prepared to leave, Violet turned back to Adam. His expression was guarded, hope warring with the pragmatism of a man who had learned early that life rarely offered easy solutions. "It might work," he said quietly once they were alone again. "If Eleanor Wilcox is willing to speak the truth." Violet nodded. "Mother has good instincts about people. If she thinks Eleanor might help, she's probably right." Adam reached through the bars again, taking her hands in his. "Violet, if this doesn't work, if they take me to Helena, I want you to promise me something." "Adam, please," he insisted, "promise me you won't follow. Promise me you'll stay safe, even if it means letting me face this alone." The thought of Adam being taken away, of not knowing what might happen to him, made her physically ill. But she saw the plea in his eyes and understood its source, not a lack of faith in her courage, but a depth of love that put her safety above his own. "I promise," she said finally, though the words tasted bitter. "But only if you promise to fight with everything you have, to come back to me." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "That, Violet Blackburn, is the easiest promise I've ever made." The waiting was excruciating. Violet spent most of it sitting in the sheriff's office, unable to bring herself to leave, even when Sheriff Parker suggested she might be more comfortable at the hotel or the cafe. Adam had been given permission to have his cell door open so he could sit and talk with her through the barred window in the door separating the office from the jail cells. They spoke of everything and nothing, memories of their first meetings, dreams of what they might build together, even practical discussions about the irrigation system Adam had been implementing on the ranch. Neither mentioned the possibility that all those plans might come to nothing if he was transported to Helena. It was nearly 3 o'clock when the office door burst open. Martha Blackburn entered, followed by George and, to Violet's shock, Eleanor Wilcox herself. Eleanor was a slender woman in her 50s, elegant even in riding clothes, with silver-streaked dark hair and sharp blue eyes. She nodded politely to Violet before addressing Sheriff Parker directly. "Sheriff, I understand my stepson has accused this man of stealing his father's pocket watch." Her voice was cultured with the hint of an Eastern accent. "Yes, madam. Says it went missing after their altercation a few weeks back." Eleanor's expression hardened slightly. "I see. And did Clayton tell you that his father's gold watch has been in my jewelry box for the past 10 years? That Henry Wilcox left it specifically to me in his will, much to Clayton's disappointment?" Sheriff Parker's eyebrows shot up. "No, madam, he did not mention that." "I thought not." She reached into her handbag and withdrew a gleaming gold pocket watch on a fine chain. "This is Henry's watch. As you can see, it is very much not missing." Violet felt a rush of relief so powerful her knees nearly buckled. Adam, watching from the jail doorway, exhaled slowly, his shoulders relaxing for the first time in 24 hours. "Mrs. Wilcox, are you willing to sign a statement to that effect?" Sheriff Parker asked, already reaching for paper. "I am, and I wish to press charges against my stepson for filing a false report and perjury." Her voice was firm, brooking no argument. "I've tolerated Clayton's schemes and manipulations for years for the sake of family peace, but this crosses a line I cannot ignore." Sheriff Parker looked uncomfortable. "Madam, that's a serious step. Mr. Wilcox is a powerful man in this territory." So is his father, Eleanor replied coolly, and Henry would be ashamed of what his son has become. I've brought a letter with me as well from Judge Wilson himself. This caused a stir in the room. Sheriff Parker accepted the sealed envelope with evident surprise. You've already spoken to the judge. I sent a telegram this morning after Martha's visit. The judge is a longtime friend of the family of Henry's family, not Clayton's cronies. He is displeased to learn his court has been used for personal vendettas. Sheriff Parker read the letter, his expression shifting from concern to relief. Well, this changes things. He looked up at Adam. Mr. Ryder, it seems you're a free man. Judge Wilson has dismissed all charges against you and has called for an investigation into Mr. Wilcox's legal activities. Adam stepped fully into the office as Sheriff Parker unlocked the connecting door. Violet didn't hesitate. She threw herself into his arms, not caring about propriety or the observers. Adam held her tightly, his face buried in her hair. "Thank you, Mrs. Wilcox," he said over Violet's shoulder. "I don't know how to repay your kindness." Eleanor Wilcox's stern countenance softened slightly. "There's no debt, Mr. Ryder. I'm simply setting right something that should never have happened." She turned to Martha Blackburn. "And thank you, Martha, for having the courage to approach me. It's been too long since we spoke freely." As the adults continued their conversation, discussing the implications for the land dispute and what Clayton's next move might be, Adam led Violet outside onto the boardwalk. The late afternoon sun bathed the dusty street in golden light, glinting off the windows of the general store across the way. "I can't believe we're standing here," Violet said, still clinging to his hand as if afraid he might vanish if she let go. "A few hours ago I thought I might lose you." Adam turned to face her fully. "Violet Blackburn, if there's one thing I've learned in my life, it's that time is precious and tomorrow is never guaranteed." He took both her hands in his. "I had something I wanted to ask you before the sheriff arrived yesterday." Violet's heart quickened. "Yes? I don't have much to offer, no land of my own yet, no fortune. But I have these hands that know how to work, this heart that knows how to love, and every day I can promise you for the rest of my life." He knelt on the dusty boardwalk, oblivious to the curious glances from passers-by. "Violet, will you marry me? Not because of land or alliances or anything except that I love you and want to build a life with you." Tears sprang to Violet's eyes, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, Adam Ryder, I will marry you." He rose to his feet and kissed her there in the street. A kiss that spoke of promises and passion and a future stretching out before them, a future they had fought for and won. When they finally broke apart, breathless and smiling, they turned to find George and Martha standing in the doorway of the sheriff's office, watching them with expressions that mingled happiness and lingering parental concern. "I suppose I should have asked your father first," Adam said, suddenly conscious of tradition. Violet squeezed his hand. "My father tried to choose my husband once already. This time, the choice is mine." Nevertheless, they approached her parents together. Adam squared his shoulders, meeting George Blackburn's gaze directly. "Sir, I've asked your daughter to marry me, and she's done me the great honor of accepting. I hope we have your blessing." George studied Adam for a long moment. The older man had changed in these past weeks, the ordeal with Wilcox, seeing his daughter stand firm for her own choices, witnessing the devotion between her and Adam. The hard edges of his authority had softened, tempered by a recognition of his own failings. Do you love her?" he asked simply. "With everything I am," Adam replied without hesitation. George nodded slowly. "Then you have my blessing. But," he added with a hint of his old sternness, "I expect you to work that land as if it were your own. The Blackburn ranch will be your inheritance some day, and I won't see my life's work squandered." "I wouldn't dream of it, sir." Martha stepped forward then, embracing Violet, and then, to Adam's surprise, him as well. "Welcome to our family, Adam," she said softly. "I've never seen my daughter as happy as she is with you." As they rode back to the ranch together, the future seemed to unfold before them like the vast Montana sky, wide open, full of possibility. The threat of Clayton Wilcox still lingered on the horizon, but with Eleanor's unexpected alliance, they faced it with newfound confidence. The wedding took place in October, when the cottonwoods along the creek had turned to gold, and the first hint of winter rode the evening breeze. It was a simple ceremony at the Blackburn ranch, attended by neighboring families, ranch hands, and even Eleanor Wilcox, whose presence sent a clear message about where her loyalties now lay. Clayton himself was conspicuously absent. Word had spread that Judge Wilson's investigation had uncovered evidence of fraud in several of Clayton's business dealings, and he had retreated to his property, his influence in local affairs diminished, though not entirely eliminated. As Violet and Adam exchanged vows under an arch of autumn branches, the past seemed to fall away, the arranged marriage, the flight, the false accusations, leaving only this moment of promise and the future they would build together. George Blackburn, watching his daughter pledge her life to the man she had chosen, felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He reached for Martha's hand, squeezing it gently. "She reminds me of you," he whispered. "Same spirit, same determination." Martha smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "She's stronger than I ever was. She fought for her choice. I'm proud of her." "We both are," George agreed, a catch in his voice. After the ceremony, as friends and neighbors celebrated with food and music in the barn, Adam led Violet away for a moment of privacy. They walked to the ridge overlooking the ranch, where the land stretched out before them, painted in the rich colors of fall. "Mrs. Ryder," Adam said, testing the name on his tongue, "I still can't believe you're my wife." Violet leaned into him, savoring the solid warmth of him beside her. "Believe it. I chose you, Adam Ryder, and I'll keep choosing you every day for the rest of our lives." He kissed her then, a kiss that sealed their vows more truly than any word spoken before witnesses. When they broke apart, breathless, Adam reached into his pocket and withdrew a small leather pouch. "I have something for you," he said, a hint of nervousness in his voice. "It's not much, but if it's from you, it's everything," Violet assured him. From the pouch, Adam withdrew a delicate gold band set with a small, perfect pearl. "It was my mother's," he explained. "The only thing of hers I have left. She gave it to me before she died, told me to save it for the woman who captured my heart." He slipped it onto Violet's finger, above the simple gold band they'd used in the ceremony. "It belongs with you now." Tears filled Violet's eyes as she admired the ring. "It's beautiful, Adam. I'll treasure it always." They stood together on the ridge as the sunset painted the sky in fiery hues, casting long shadows across the land that would be their home, their legacy. Below them, laughter and music drifted up from the celebration, the sounds of community, of family, of belonging. "Whatever comes," Adam said softly, his arm around her waist, "we face it together." "Together," Violet agreed, resting her head against his shoulder, and as the first stars appeared in the deepening blue of the eastern sky. They turned, and walked hand in hand back toward the lights of home, toward the future they had fought for, and won a future built not on arrangements or obligations, but on choice, on courage, and on love freely given and joyfully received. 5 years later, the Blackburn Ryder Ranch stood as one of the most prosperous in the county. The irrigation system Adam had implemented had seen them through 3 seasons of drought, and their reputation for fine horses had spread throughout the territory. The house had expanded to accommodate their growing family first, with the addition of twin boys, George and Henry, now 4 years old, and more recently with the birth of their daughter Rose, just 6 months ago. On a warm June evening, Violet sat on the front porch, Rose sleeping against her shoulder, watching Adam and the twins in the corral. The boys were perched on the fence, their legs dangling, as Adam demonstrated how to approach a young filly they were training. George Blackburn stood beside them, offering occasional advice, his hair now completely gray, but his posture still strong and commanding. Martha emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. "Those biscuits should be ready in about 10 minutes, she announced, settling into the rocking chair beside Violet. She reached over to stroke Rose's downy head. "She's growing so fast." "Too fast," Violet agreed with a smile. "And those boys, I turn around and they've grown another inch." They watched in companionable silence as Adam lifted first one twin, then the other, onto the back of the gentle mare. The boys' identical faces lit up with identical grins, their dark hair so like their father's ruffled by the evening breeze. "You know," Martha said thoughtfully, 5 years ago, I never would have imagined this. Your father was so set on that arrangement with Wilcox. I was afraid." "That I'd give in?" Violet finished for her. "Or that I'd run away and never come back?" Martha nodded. "Either would have broken my heart, but I underestimated you. You found a third path, standing your ground, fighting for your choice." Violet shifted Rose to her other shoulder, considering her mother's words. "I had good examples," she said finally. "You and Father, despite his stubbornness, I always knew you married for love." "We did," Martha confirmed, "though I sometimes wonder if I let him forget that over the years. When he tried to arrange your marriage, I should have spoken up sooner. More forcefully." "You did when it mattered most," Violet reminded her. "Going to Eleanor Wilcox that day, I've never been more proud to be your daughter." A comfortable silence fell between them again, broken only by the distant sounds of Adam's instructions to the twins and their excited responses. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the yard. "Have you heard any news of Clayton?" Martha asked eventually, her voice careful. Violet shook her head. "Not since he sold his property last year and moved to California. Father thinks he's trying to rebuild his fortune in the gold fields." "Good riddance," Martha murmured, uncharacteristically harsh. Then, softer, "I do feel for Eleanor, though, losing the ranch that had been in her husband's family for so long." "She seems content at his sister's place in Denver," Violet replied. "Her last letter mentioned she's considering opening a small school there." The conversation paused as the men and boys approached the house, the day's work with the horses complete. The twins ran ahead, racing each other to the porch. "Mama, Mama," they called in unison. "Papa let us ride all by ourselves." "I saw," Violet laughed, reaching out her free arm to gather them close. "You both looked very grown up." Adam mounted the steps, his eyes finding hers with the same warmth that had been there from the beginning. 5 years of marriage, 3 children, countless challenges and triumphs, and still, that look could make her heart race. "Those boys have a natural seat," he said proudly. "Another year or two they'll be helping with the spring roundup." George snorted as he joined them. "Let them be boys a while longer, son. Plenty of time for hard work later." This gentle admonishment from a man who had once expected his own children to work from sunup to sundown showed how much George Blackburn had changed. The birth of his grandsons had softened him in ways that nothing else could have. As if sensing his thoughts, Martha rose and slipped her arm through her husband's. "Come help me with dinner, George. These young folks deserve a moment's peace." Once they had gone inside, Adam sat beside Violet, slipping an arm around her shoulders and gently touching Rose's sleeping face with his free hand. "How's our little lady today?" "Perfect," Violet replied, leaning into him, "though she'll be wanting to eat soon. She has your appetite." Adam laughed softly. "Poor girl. Let's hope she has your patience to balance it out." The twins, momentarily forgotten, tugged at their father's pants leg. "Papa, can we show Mama our new roping skills before dinner?" "Tomorrow," he promised. "Right now, I think your grandmother could use some help setting the table. Think you can manage that?" They nodded eagerly and dashed inside, their boundless energy a marvel to their parents. In the quiet that followed, Adam pressed a kiss to Violet's temple. "Happy, Mrs. Ryder." It was a question he asked often, not out of insecurity, but as a promise, a reminder that her happiness remained his highest priority, just as it had been that day he'd stood between her and Clayton Wilcox, declaring that her heart had the right to choose. "Completely," she answered truthfully, turning to meet his gaze. Are you?" "More than I ever thought possible." His eyes, so often serious, crinkled at the corners with genuine contentment. "You know, when I rode onto this ranch 5 years ago, I was just looking for work. I never imagined I'd find a home, a family, a place to belong. And I never imagined I'd find the courage to defy my father and choose my own path." Violet shifted Rose again as the baby began to stir. "We saved each other, I think." Adam nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Your father mentioned something interesting today. Said he's thinking of putting my name on the deed to the north section, making it officially ours. Not just Blackburn land." Violet's eyebrows rose in surprise. Though George had accepted Adam fully as his son-in-law and respected his contributions to the ranch, the older man had maintained tight control of the legal ownership. This gesture represented a final acknowledgement, a passing of the torch. "What did you say?" she asked. "I told him I was honored, but that the Blackburn name should stay on the land. It's your heritage, your family's legacy." Violet smiled, touched by his consideration. "Our family's legacy now. Blackburn Ryder, just like the sign we put up at the gate last year." "Blackburn Ryder," he agreed. The name a symbol of how their lives had intertwined, how the choices they had made had created something new and stronger than either could have built alone. Rose woke fully then, her small face scrunching as she prepared to demand her dinner. Adam took her from Violet, bouncing her gently in his arms. "Go ahead inside," he said. "I'll bring her in a minute. Just want to enjoy this sunset with my girl." Violet stood, pausing to kiss them both before heading toward the house. At the door, she turned back to look at the man she had chosen, the cowboy who had declared that her heart had the right to decide its own path. He stood outlined against the golden evening sky, their daughter cradled in his strong arms, his face bent close to hers as he whispered words Violet couldn't hear, but knew were filled with the same love he had always shown their family. 5 years ago, they had stood against those who would have forced her into a marriage for land and power. They had fought for the right to follow their hearts, to build a life on love rather than arrangement. Looking at Adam and Rose silhouetted against the sunset, at the prosperous ranch around them, at the family gathered inside waiting for dinner, Violet knew they had won something far more valuable than land. They had won the freedom to choose their own destiny, and every day they chose each other.